Hello everyone, this is Dave Nader 12 here, and welcome to the sequel to what is actually a stand video. Before we start this discussion, we must go over the information that we covered in the what is actually a stand video. If you haven't watched that video, I recommend going back to that video because if you haven't, a lot of these things I will say will not make sense. In that video, we concluded that stands are an individual's life energy that can tap into a specific universal law or energy. That being the case, it makes so much sense why only stand users can see other stands apart from their own. We know that this life energy can be sensed, but cannot be perceived by some non-stand users. Stands are associated with psychic energy since they have the closest affinity to it. However, stands can far exceed a human psyche with the two examples of GER and Wonder View. Last time I said that stands can't be associated with psychic energy. The biggest examples that I can think of that can help this point is Anubis, Cheap Trick, Le Fleurs, and the Milagro Man having no user when we saw each of these stands. How could stands be considered a psychic energy if there is no one associated with them? It is way easier to believe that stands are more a life energy than a psychic energy. Why do I say this? Well, first, we know that stands are on the same wavelength as other supernatural creatures, such as ghosts, spirits, gods, rock humans, and vampires. Vampires, you say? Yes. Since it is implied, you might be able to get a stand with a stone mask. So, you can include the Pillarmen and zombies in that list too. This means that vampirism and the ability to suck blood, or the representation of life, is a natural contrast to stands. Since Hamon and the spin are steps to achieve a stand, and both need a sense of life energy, we can assume that stands are the representation of someone's life energy. However, I want to make it clear that stands themselves are not life energy. Stands are made up of stand energy. Let me explain. When obtaining a stand through the arrow, isn't it curious that someone has a higher chance of dying? The reason of death is not actually the virus killing an individual, but it's seeing if the individual is able to turn their life energy into stand energy. If they survive, they can summon their stand, or they just die. Now, why do these people die that get struck by the arrow? It's most likely that having one's life energy change and form into stand energy puts a great strain on both the soul and body. Once the process of obtaining a stand through stand energy is completed, the person's soul and body are bound to the stand. That is why only stands can harm other stands, and why if the stand is hurt, the person also gets hurt. This also is a great point, and it can help explain why stands bleed. Have you ever noticed that? I would say the experience of having a stand is kind of like astral projection, but if you stopped midway through the process, is my metaphor. When talking about the Phantom Blood universe, all stands lead back to the crash of the meteorite. I know some people think that stands can be achieved through pure skill like Tonio. However, in part 6, Jotaro tells us that stand potential can be inherited. So it's more likely that Tonio's descendants had stands, or close to the crash site of the meteorite, or they were just near a stand arrow. Now, you're wondering, just near a stand arrow? How can I say this? Well, the Steel Ball Run universe points me into that direction. Let me explain. We see that the Holy Corpse works in a similar way to the arrow, but better. Instead of having a space virus push an individual's life energy turn into stand energy, it seems like the corpse is using the Holy Spirit in a sense. Think about it. Whenever a person in the Steel Ball Run universe passes by a blessing from the earth, or is in possession of a corpse part, they either get a stand or die. If you don't remember, when the Devil's Palm was introduced in part 7, there were people who got stands, but they died too, just like the meteorite site in this Phantom Blood universe. However, the Holy Corpse does the process much easier, since it is implied that Jesus Christ, the OG, and God, see part 6, has access to stand energy. We see less deaths from the process in the Steel Ball Run universe because it's either God or Jesus Christ's will to give stands to certain individuals. It is implied that one must have stand potential to receive a stand, or they die. But it's weird because everything in the franchise has stand potential at the same time. Alright. Let me explain this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying stand energy. Imagine all energies or laws like a string. Stand energy is the one and only string that can reach every other string. Those other strings are those other energies. To explain this analogy, let us use Avdol's stand magician's red. Avdol inherited stand potential and received a stand. Avdol's life energy turned into stand energy. Then, at that point in time, Avdol's soul guided his stand energy to harness fire energy. Then his soul, stand energy, and fire energy merged into magician's red, creating that stand. The biggest point to make here is that there is always an event where one achieves their stand. I will be calling this a canon event. For Kakyoin, Avdol, Polnareff, and Anasui, it was probably the moment that they were given life or birth. For Gyro, it was the perfect rotation when he threw the ball against Valentine. For Tonio, it was the mastery of his craft. For Koichi, it was an arrow down his throat. Speaking of Koichi, let us talk about how power-ups, or how I like to call them upgrades, work in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure under this stand energy theory. Some energies require more power to get to from the stand energy string. It's like the usual process would be from point A to B, but to get from point A to C, you need more energy. Let us take, for example, Requiem energy. To reach the Requiem energy string from the stand energy string, one needs enough stand energy to reach that point. So, what Polnareff and Giorno did was amazing. They used an arrow to do the life energy to stand energy process, but went from stand energy to Requiem energy. They sacrificed the sever of life energy to stand energy to achieve and use Requiem energy. This is how Silver Chariot Requiem and Gold Experience Requiem were no longer bound to the souls of their users. It is only when the arrow is physically out of the body of the stand that the connection goes back to that life energy to stand energy connection. I just want to point out, Jotaro always had the ability to stop time. It's just that he never knew it throughout the journey of Stardust Crusaders. However, I hope you are paying attention because we are going to be talking about Johnny and Gabby next. We are going to be combining certain things from this video so far together to talk about the two boys. In the last video, I explained that both Koichi and Johnny were able to improve their stands within a certain energy. Think about it like this. Essentially what happened is that both Johnny and Koichi had more than one cannon event. Each cannon event brought their stand energy string and their other respective energy string together, making their stand stronger. Think of it when you have two pipe cleaner and you twist them together. Each cannon event is another twist, making it stronger. When talking about Gappy, he was only using a bootleg version of his stand, you see. That is why his ability kept changing, since he did not have his own cannon event yet. It was only when he achieved Go Beyond in his cannon event of understanding his bubble did his soul finally guide his stand energy string to the 0 energy string. By the way, this string is outside the bubble of strings, because it doesn't exist. To end off this video, I will talk about stand potential one last time. We know in part 6 that stand potential can be inherited. We also know that in part 3 that if a family member receives a stand, all other immediate family members receive stand potential. Why don't they inherit stands, you might ask? Well, the biggest point is that Jolene never had stone free until her cannon event of getting scratched by the arrow piece. Jolene inherited stand potential, but not a stand. We saw this in Giorno and how he inherited stand potential with his first cannon event when he was born. We know that. We also know that he had 2 other cannon events, making his hair turn blonde. Trish is another good example. Trish inherited stand potential, but it was not until she was around other stand users did her stand finally manifest. Araki has made a power system that anyone can achieve. If you want to take away something from this video, just remember that stands are the representation of an individual's life energy that can harness a universal law or energy. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and be on the lookout for my Gold Experience Requiem and Wonder of You video. This is Davinator12, signing off.
You're too slow!
We are Venom.